Joining me today is the creator of the upcoming sci-fi heist graphic novel, Bridge Planet 9, which tells the tale of four down-and-out thieves on an abandoned colony planet looking for an easy steal, until the planet's dark secrets flip this simple job into a bloody fight for survival. It is my pleasure to welcome Jared Throne onto the Oblivion Bar Podcast.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Jared, thank you so much for joining us here. I appreciate it, man. It's great to have you here. And I know it's, I especially appreciate it because you just got back from SPX, Small Press Expo out there in Bethesda, Maryland, which is pretty much like the mecca for, I would say, like indie creators.
Sure.
Very, very jealous. I've always wanted to go. Unfortunately, I'm stuck here in the Midwest, so I haven't been able to get out there quite yet. But I'm just curious, what was that experience like for you out there this year? And then how was it tabling for Top Shelf for the first time there as one of their talents?
Yeah, it was great. It was really great. One of the best years I've had at SPX. I got to see my new book. That was the first time I actually got to see it in print. So that was really rad. It sold out, which was crazy. Was not expecting that. It was cool being at the Top Shelf table, having a little bit more of a sense of community, a few people there. I got to hang out with like Ricky Leem and, Ben Wickley and some other guys working on their books and pushing their stuff too, which was fun. And of course the Top Shelf staff and all that. But yeah, SPX is fantastic. You definitely gotta go out. I've been 3 or 4 times, and even when I don't get a table, I just go because I'm pretty close by too, luckily enough. But
that was gonna be my next question. Was like, are you based out of the East Coast there?
I'm in Richmond, Virginia, so it's like a 2-hour drive. So I've gone, up for the day before in previous years and stuff like that too. But yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm curious, being that it's like sort of a small press, sort of a indie creator centric con. Is Top Shelf one of the bigger publishers there? Is that sort of how it goes, or is there anyone bigger than that even?
Yeah, I think it is relative. You're right. Like it's obviously small press, but I think they are. Drawn and Quarterly was there this year. Fantagraphics was there. Silver Sprocket. So a lot of the people putting out graphic novels and kind of top talent indie stuff are all there. Plus, you've got like Nate Powell and all those guys are showing up. So it's a good mix, but I do like SPX because they do, I believe the table system is pretty much a lottery. I'm sure obviously they ask people to come, but it does also bring in a lot of people who haven't done almost anything before. So it's really fun to walk around and see, somebody who's got 6 books next to somebody who's just pushing little zines and you're like, I think that kid might blow up. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of a moment that I had at New York Comic Con. I think it was in 2019. I was just sort of browsing around the earlier part of the the floor show opening and all that.
Yeah.
And, it's mostly, I'm sure you've probably been there in the earlier parts where it's barely, Artist Alley is pretty much empty. And I'm walking through and I see this one gentleman. He's got 2 books on his table. He's sitting there sketching away very quietly. And I was just kind of blown away by his work. And I sat there and chatted with him, and he didn't really seem like he wasn't being rude, but he didn't really seem like he was wanting to have a conversation. It seemed like he was there to do some commissions or maybe just sort of have a breath before the wildness of New York Comic Con. So I tried to respect that. But I remember thinking in that moment, man, he's going to be huge. And I don't know if you've heard of this artist, but it was Matt Lesniewski. Who is just it's I would say the Picasso of comic art. He's has incredibly sort of unique style. And I remember thinking that moment in a very similar way that you were saying there at SPX that you see someone's work, you're like, wow, they're going to be someone someday. And I'm sure people thought that about you as well, walking up to your tabling there at
maybe.
Yeah. Well, that sort of brings me to my next question here, which, I saw your haul there on Instagram of all the work that you picked up from, other creators and such. Was there anyone or is there anyone immediately that comes to mind that you found for the first time there at the show and were just really impressed by?
Oh man, that I found for the first time. I'm looking through my little stack over here that I got. I'll pull some stuff out. I don't know about you don't even have first.
You don't have to limit it to first time. If there was just anyone there that you were sort of blown away by.
Ren McDonald was there. He does a lot of risograph stuff. He's really great. This is a Richmond guy. I'm going to say his name wrong. He's going to hate me for it, but I think it's Howden Fraley. He's really great. I like his stuff a lot. He goes to all the local Richmond shows too. And I did get the Jesse
There you go.
You're interviewing this
Jesse
guy soon,
Lonergan.
I think. Yeah. I got his little mini comic and I was stoked. I had never met him before.
Jesse's the best. Yeah. We are talking to him later in October. So yeah, it's, or no, sorry, I apologize. Here in about a week. I got my calendar all mixed up, but yeah, we're talking.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Week. And yeah, one of the best, right? Like Jesse is just, I think for a long time, sort of very similar to what we're talking about. Sort of, you could go to a con and he'd have maybe one, maybe two people at his booth, but when you walk up and see his stuff, it's unlike anybody else there at the convention.
Yeah, he was a super nice guy too. I didn't know he was going to be there, but I had seen his most recent book getting posted quite a bit online, so I saw him and we chatted for a bit. But yeah, it's always fun to grab little zines and mini comics from guys like that too, where they're putting out some really cool books and they're just making this stuff, just for these little tiny shows. It's the best.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to this to get a chance for our listeners to sort of get to know you a little bit, because you are still kind of, I would say, earlier on in your career.
Oh, sure.
And of course, I say that respectfully, like you've done work, but
you're 100% right. Yeah.
But and I want to get into that a little bit before we get into the part of the reason why you're actually here, which is for Bridge Planet 9. Your background includes working in design, which if folks have seen your work, whether it be on social media or on your website, et cetera, it's almost apparent that you've worked in design before. You've got a very particular style that I think it shows this professionalism that I think is almost, it's immediate, right? You're also a musician as well, from what I understand. So you're a man of many talents, but it seems that comics has gotten a lot of your central focus here recently. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about why you want to tell stories sequentially, and also what is sort of your history with comics?
Sure. Yeah. I love design. But it is my day job, and it's, you're always working for other people, which I think does teach you a lot of valuable lessons creatively and pushes you a lot. And then music I love, but it's always been kind of like, I just don't feel like I'm ever going to be a rock star or anything. Music is very therapeutic for me. It's very personal, and a lot of writing autobiographical songs and stuff like that. So comics have just always been the winner for me. And I do think I've had people say I'm like very creatively productive. Like I do a lot and I make a lot. That doesn't mean all of it's good all the time, but there is a lot of it. Yeah. Comics to me have always just captured me more than anything else. I grew up reading Spider-Man comics, old Spider-Mans. I got a copy over here of like Essential Spider-Man books. I don't know if you ever read any of those books, but they're like black and white newsprint.
My first comic ever was an Avengers Essentials collection that my librarian got me. So yeah, total same sort of similar origin story there. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because, all those comics are obviously from the 60s and 70s and stuff, but I felt like I was like, looking back, I was like, man, I was a target audience for this, like a little 8-9-year-old kid trying to have an adventure in a book. So it stuck with me. But yeah, I've been reading comics ever since. I got obviously tons of stuff like everybody else. And but in terms of making comics, it was always off and on. I didn't really trust my art skills, and I drew when I was younger. Then I kind of stopped drawing as much, and I tried to write some and work with other artists, and I just felt like it wasn't getting there. And eventually I was like, I'm going to really, harbor down on trying to learn art and get better at illustration and get to a point where I feel like I can make books. And so it's been years of doing that and working and practicing and getting to this point. So that's not the most exciting story. It's probably what a lot of people say, but yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it tells sort of a larger story. And I think what really struck me about what you just said there is, and it brought up this idea of, obviously you've been doing, as you said, design as your normal day to day. And there's a processes that goes along with that to create a design for, whether it be for businesses or for like a podcast. Like Aaron and I, we recently got a brand new brand design for the Oblivion Bar, where we went for sort of this, like, I would say sort of synthy, late 80s, early 90s, sort of, I would even say like a hint of horror, like a synth wave type of feel. And it's important.
It's cool. I like it.
Oh, thank you. We love it as well. It very much speaks to what we love in terms of movies and comics and television and music and all of that, right? Even up down to our music, which we had done by Dream Kid, and again, it sort of speaks to this larger identity, right? And you have to deal with that a lot with design. And I'm just curious, when you're sort of going through that process in terms of designing a project, which again, as you said, is sort of your day job, and then over here, a creative venture and telling stories sequentially. are there some lessons you had to learn? You said you had to sort of learn how to tell stories sequentially. Can you speak a little bit more about what your process, how did you go about that, right? What are some of the major differences when it goes through, I have this project here with designing, I have this project that I want to do creatively with comics. What are those lessons that you had to learn?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. I work in branding and brand standards more than anything else. So that's definitely the bread and butter for me for the most part. And I think comics, particularly graphic novels, are systematic to a point, right? Like there's obviously like exceptions to every rule, but for the most part, when you read a graphic novel, there's like a set amount of line weights and tones, and like there's an approach to the pages. And so I think creating and understanding those systems and being able to have the vision for what you want out of them is really important, and does overlap with design some, of saying things like, especially in today's world, a lot of people are drawing digitally, or they're drawing bigger than the print size. So you're creating something and you're spending months and months on something without ever seeing it live in the actual space that you're creating it for, right? So that foresight and making sure that you're setting up your process to meet what you want at the end of the day, I think is very parallel with a lot of design and graphic design work. I think the big difference is the personal part. Design work is always, for the most part, you might do personal branding or I do stuff for my band, but like generally speaking, it doesn't have your name on it at the end of the day, really. You don't have to put it in your portfolio if you don't want to. And so there is sort of like a service industry, make the customer happy feeling. Books, graphic novels are the total opposite. Like my name is on the front cover. Like I don't want it to look like crap. It's got to be good, and it's got to be something that I'm excited about. So there's a different level of like self-pressure that goes into it. But I enjoy that. I think it's interesting, and I think it's really fun to see it come together, and seeing it, in print last weekend and being like, yeah, I would buy this. I would read this. I would support this if somebody else was making it, is like there's something really cool about that, especially as a culmination of, so many months of work, like anybody else who's made comics. It's just a lot of hours. So yeah, it's different. I think I have learned lessons from both. I also think some of those making the customer happy can be like a point of frustration for a lot of people who work in design or marketing, but it does kind of teach you like thicker skin, and teaches you how to be okay with like, like I drew dozens of pages for this book that never got into the book. And I know a lot of other creators who do stuff like that too. And those are hard lessons to learn, to be like, I did a lot of work and it's not it, so I got to do it again. And I think that's good. You're trying to get to the best possible end result you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard a lot about that, specifically about movies, but I think you could obviously say that about a lot of different mediums. But in this case, definitely comics, where a lot of that stuff that gets left on the cutting room floor can be a little disheartening. It's what they call that, kill your darlings, right? It's like the idea of having to sort of pick what's best for the story rather than like what maybe struck you emotionally. And I want to go back just a little bit though, in terms of the design of it all, because I'm a firm believer, especially in 2025, where there's so much great art out there, that design, I think, is almost as important than a lot of, it is as important, if not maybe one of the most important things, because whether people want to admit it or not, people do judge they judge a book by its cover, right? That's something you notice, I think, immediately with your work, but I think specifically with Bridge Planet 9, that when you see the cover, it's striking and it makes you want to read it immediately. I'm not trying to butter you up too much here at the beginning of the conversation.
No, but butter me up. That's fine. I'm good. I like compliments.
I think that speaks to why people were so jazzed about it at SPX, is because it's a book that sort of, it sells really well on its cover, right? Like there is something we're talking to Chip Kidd next week, who is, I think, one of the greatest comic designers ever, right?
Well, designers, period, especially cover artists. I don't know why I'm on this show if you're talking to Chip Kidd next week, but top tier legendary talent for sure. Right. So
he created the freaking Jurassic Park logo. The guy is just, but I think that speaks to like this larger idea that when someone like Alex Ross is creating a book, he partners with Chip Kidd for a reason, because of that design aspect. And again, to tie that all back into your career, I think that your design history and that sort of emphasis is going to be very, very valuable going forward. I want to say though, I want to sort of get into the actual book, the actual interiors of it all, your actual work, right?
Yeah.
Because, again, Bridge Planet Nine is your first published work. You've obviously done other comics besides that, but I feel like your work, again, speaking on the sequential side, the inside of the cover there, your work carries this quiet intensity. I found while reading, going through your work in preparation for this conversation, it allows the reader, I found, to sort of take time to analyze the page, and really can drink it all in. You're really effective, I think, with sort of the use of space. And again, I think that comes from that design background, right?
Yeah.
I think this is best illustrated with your usage of and I found this a lot in the 3/4 page sort of like landscape page. Like you're getting like a better look of sort of the larger landscape. You use that quite a bit, I think, in Bridge Planet 9 and also in your other work. I feel like it gives a good look of the environment that your characters are in. This made me think of like my favorite Peter Weller movies, like these establishing landscape shots that are really important to understanding the environment that your characters live in. So how much of that is sort of your artistic impulse, again, with that design history, or is that a deliberate thing that you sort of decide on before you even lay out your panels?
Yeah, it's all deliberate. You draw every line, so you're hopefully making choices as you go along the way. But I think I think you're right about sense of design in general, because I am aware, like, I love my work. I'm excited about this book, but I am also aware that I am not like Steve McNiven or like Olivier Coipel or something. Like, it's just different, right? So I want to lean into what I feel like are my strengths, which are layouts and design work, and hopefully like really clear storytelling. And I think those establishing shots and that breathability in the book is one. I think it's really important for the stories that you want to tell. This is a story about a dead planet. Like, it's empty, it's harsh. And I think something that was jam-packed might feel a little, contradictory to that type of feeling. But at the same time, I also think, to me, comics are a visual medium, and particularly people who are new to making comics, what I notice is you do get a lot of jam-packed lettering and a jam-packed storytelling, and you get tons of action on one little page, and you have to have all these panels, and you can have really, really incredible artists and even great writers, but it can be hard to follow what's happening. And so to me, I really felt like, okay, I'm going to trust my sense of design, and I'm going to kind of lean on the fact that, like, on a technical level, I might be not as top tier as other people. So I want my story to be very clear and paced very, very intentionally so that you know how you're getting through the story. And I do think, to your point, that a lot of that is inspired by film and cinema, like just the way that different directors shoot scenes for different reasons and how close they get at certain parts, and when they put in those establishing shots and all that. I try to pay attention to a lot of that and let it inspire my work as much as I can. So I'm glad you're seeing some of that and connecting with it.
Yeah, I think it's important for readers and listeners of this conversation to understand that, like, creators, you guys do a lot of thumbnails and a lot of pre-planning for nothing is by mistake. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're seeing something like, again, like a sort of a mountain range on a planet, on a barren planet, there's probably a reason for that. And I think it maybe speaks, I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what you meant by certain shots, but my interpretation was essentially that, like, you want to illustrate that this is a pretty empty planet. And then, like, the only people, and I don't want to give too much away of this story. I think it's important for us to stay relatively spoiler free for this conversation, because this book won't even come out for about a month after I eventually put this interview out. But I want people to understand that, like, there's a lot of this, and I think it's important that people know that, like, the shots that you include, and I also want to. I'm going to cut myself off, and I'm going to challenge you a little bit all in one breath, because the sort of technicality is so secondary, I think, in comics, but especially at the point in your career that you're in, right?
Yeah.
Because, there's only one Steve McNiven, right? You know what I mean? Like, there's only one Tradd Moore. Yeah. There's only one Paul Pope. I like the sort of technicality of it all, I think, is so secondary to all that. I think you do an incredible job of sort of painting this idea of residents caring about the character. You get across the idea that I think you're trying to get across. At least I hope that you're trying to get across. And I guess I want to give you sort of like a pseudo pat on the back that, like, I think what you're doing is really incredible here. And I know you weren't fishing for that, right? But, like,
sure.
I think it's important that I illustrate to you in this moment that we're talking face to face but also to the listener that like the fact that this is your first published work is kind of insane to me. I think that's really important that people understand that not only is this your first published work, but that it is this good, you know? So that's sort of my point. I know, again, I try to stay away from the buttering up when it comes to these interviews, but you saying that maybe it sort of prompted me to be like, dude, you're killing it, you know?
No, thank you. It's definitely, it's creative work. Everybody's insecure trying to navigate these conversations.
I don't like to quote Kanye West very often anymore, but he
understandable.
He has a great quote from Graduation where he's like, "We're all self-conscious. I'm just the first to admit it." I think of that often, that like I think that it's important that we should stay humble in these moments, and that we all have imposter syndrome. I do with anything. Yeah. Like I like to write. And obviously the podcast is another creative venture, and I work in marketing. So we sort of work in these similar fields where, to speak on what you were saying a moment ago, in marketing, it's not really about what juices you creatively. It's more about what juices the person that you're working for. And that can be sort of demoralizing creatively sometimes, but that's not the job, right? It's the job in moments where I get to create a podcast talking to you. It's the job where you get to tell a story like Bridge Planet 9. So it's all that. But I'm curious, to sort of stick on that idea of creativeness. When you get stuck creatively, say you've worked out a couple pages of Bridge Planet 9 or another project, what sort of stimulates you to get back in that? What is there anything that you sort of do to sort of get you back in that headspace to get you going?
I read a lot. I mean, that maybe sounds really stupid and obvious on a comic book podcast, but I really do. I try to read lots of books all the time, comics and graphic novels, and really shake it up with what I'm reading. Everything from Spider-Man Marvel stuff to obscure European stuff or whatever. And that does help a lot to see other people's ideas coming out. But I take a lot of walks too. I take a lot of long walks with my kid and think through things, And then of course you got to have like some sounding boards and friends and people you're talking to about stuff. Cause you're right. It's really easy to get stuck. I don't feel super stuck with art all the time because I do so much pre-planning before I get into drawing. But in terms of beats and story, that's where things get hung up, and then it just kind of spins in your head, and I'm in the shower or I'm driving to work or something, and you're just trying to hammer out whatever that detail is. But definitely other people's work, and definitely movies and TV. I think again, to me, graphic novels in particular, as in books like this, are like the most akin to film, kind of start, middle, ending, and they're wrapped up and it's done. And it's a very like unified vision from one creator. So I think film can be really, really helpful to see how people are solving problems or approaching, similar types of situations in their stories.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I think most listeners probably know this, but just for the layman, script writing for a comic and script writing for a movie, while not at all the same in terms of structure, they look pretty similar, right? In terms of like the way,
sure,
you probably speak on that better than I can, honestly. So I just know.
No, I don't have a lot of TV movie stuff, but there's definitely a lot of crossover people. I mean, there's a lot of people, I know you talked to Jeff Lemire the other week, and like he went to film school, and I don't think that's a super unfamiliar story for a lot of creators, learning that format. Because there's definitely crossover for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Christopher Cantwell, we had on the show not too long ago as well, who of course, he's worked in a ton of movies and television. So, and they all kind of speak on the same thing, right? It's just this idea that like, movies and television are fun. And again, I'm a fan. I assume, Jared, you're also a fan as well, but like comics. So there are some stories that you can only tell in comics. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And I think that's also a sort of a great transition into talking about sort of this larger idea of why you're here today, which is again, Bridge Planet 9. We've sort of danced around it, but I'd love to sort of noodle on, this book, in a very specific way. So, I mentioned it. This is your upcoming sci-fi graphic novel from Top Shelf. Comes out on October 21st. I got an early look. I got to read the entire 200 plus pages early. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. It's always exciting, when I get to chat with folks like yourself who handle every single job in this. I mean, the only thing you didn't do, I think, is probably edit the book. You wrote it, you illustrate it, you lettered it. And then also a lot of times people will color it, but obviously this book is in black and white. And I want to sort of hone in on that idea of the black and whiteness of it all. So it's sort of a two-parter, I'll say. What was your elevator pitch for Top Shelf with Bridge Planet 9? And also, why did you decide to tell this story without color?
Sure. Elevator pitch, you kind of went over earlier, but it's a sci-fi heist. It's about 4 people coming to this planet. I think what makes it a little more unique is the idea that this is a former colony planet. It's dead. It's not a colony planet anymore, and it's been bought by a corporation. So in this universe, there's these things called bridge planets, which are basically planets that have been confirmed as uninhabited, and now corporations can buy them and kind of rip out all their natural resources to fuel their ships. So it kind of just becomes like a giant gas station planet. And so the freighter that they're robbing from is self-piloted. So the idea is that they're doing this heist, and theoretically there shouldn't be anybody around for millions of miles, right? Like it should be a breeze. If they do it right, no one will even know they stole anything for months, because it takes, a long time to fly across space, of course. Spoiler alert, it doesn't go all that smoothly, clearly. But yeah, that was the pitch. Just kind of like it's a very, in some ways, there's some very typical heist structure, but in other ways, it definitely goes off the rails and kind of is a different type of animal. In terms of black and white, I work mostly in black and white. I won't give you an RC like pretentious reason. I feel like my work works.
I kind of want that.
I'll give you the pretentious reason after. You can pick which one you want to put in the podcast.
Okay.
No, I have a hard time with color. I can do it. It takes a very long time, and I really enjoy working in black and white. And I think particularly with this kind of story that is gritty and this is not a neon crisp, future that's clean and sterile. This is like, I call like a clunky future. There's a lot of like sharp edges and junk and, like stains on metal.
It's like a Weyland-Yutani inspired future.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. 100% Weyland-Yutani inspired. So I think black and white works really well in that world, and it fits the vibe of what the story is like. And I really like how it prints too. And it's also sort of going back to that design and layout feeling of it brings a level of simplicity and kind of predictability while you're reading it that I think makes it easier to focus on the story and on the characters for this particular story. I think you can accomplish that with color as well, but I think in this book, it works really well in black and white. It also is, color takes a really long time, especially when you're working by yourself too. Whenever I see like beautifully colored long graphic novels, I just feel bad for people. I'm like, this must have been like so many years of your life, and then I buy it, of course. But yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I found that really jarring. Not jarring is not the correct word. I found it really, I love what you said, but also I wanted to sort of find a more romantic way to say it. I love the black and white. I love every time I get to see a black and white. I know Marvel and DC sometimes will do like the black, white and a color. That's sort of the new shtick with them now, is to sort of do like
the Carnage and Wolverine and stuff.
Yeah, like they've done it with Star Wars as well, where they'll sort of like do the black and white. Or even like TMNT did it with, I think it was black, white, and green. So like it's fun. There is something to it though, and I guess I'm not smart enough to know what it really is, but it works really well in this setting. And I totally agree with you. I think again the strength of this story is its characters, right? And I was getting sort of like, do you ever see the movie Sunshine? It's got like Chris Evans.
Sunshine?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have.
It's Alex Garland film from the 2000s. It's got like Cillian Murphy and Chris Evans and Benedict Wong, and I'm spacing who else is in it. But
so
it's
just like a stacked cast.
An insane cast from the 2000s where it's like 3 movies. Wow. It starts off as like this alien-inspired sci-fi, and then it sort of drifts into this like sort of psychological thriller space opera, and then at the end it just becomes this total slasher horror film, and it's wildly slept on. It kind of reminded me of that. Like this book kind of reminded me of that. And there's also a little bit of like Event Horizon in there too, of like hey, this crew with a lot of folks who have something to hide going to do a thing that ends up being a wildly different venture than they were anticipating.
Right.
It sort of played all those notes really well. And I don't know if any of that was sort of an inspiration for you. And I sort of hate that sort of thought of like, it's one of those questions on the podcast. I'll sort of expose my underbelly as an interviewer, where I sort of hate those questions of like, what inspired you to tell the story? Or, who would you rather draw, Batman or Spider-Man? Like that, those kind of questions. But I am sort of curious a little bit, if you can sort of crack that nut open a little bit in terms of like what sort of pulled you in that direction of telling a story like this. Again, this sort of sci-fi, grimy heist.
Yeah. No, it's a perfectly valid question to ask, I think. It's funny you mentioned Event Horizon. I like a lot of horror stories, and a lot of the people I've talked to who've gotten a chance to read the book or like, I didn't think like, is this kind of horror? Like, is this supposed to be this way? And there's definitely like a splash of that in there. And I'm glad people are picking up because it's definitely intentional. But I mean, I love Twilight Zone dearly. So a lot of that kind of just kind of eerie, but not full on like throat cutting stuff, is very appealing to me. But there's a lot of other stuff too. I love Paper Girls. I love On a Sunbeam. I love the show Barry. It's like one of my all-time favorite shows, like fantastic crime show. So yeah, a lot of that. A lot of those stories have a lot of this, like, kind of like you were saying earlier, this sort of like, I don't want to call it like slow burn, but it's a little bit like, it's not always so overt, right? Like it's kind of a leading like anxiety or feeling overall as you get like slow paced like breadcrumbs of revelations throughout. And I think when people can do that really well without getting boring, it's like very rewarding. And I think it's also very smart to me. So I hope that I could capture some of that. But that's certainly the type of stuff that I read or watch. And I'm like, I want to make stuff like this,
Yeah, I love a methodical drama. It's also why I really love like the Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips team in comics, because
love all time. Like
yeah.
I got like,
yeah,
you can probably see him over here, but there's quite a few.
And the Killer Be Killed back there as well. Yeah.
Yep. All the reckless ones.
Yep, absolutely. It's just, I love that sort of that genre. And then I do understand how people will say that Bridge Planet Nine is sort of treading on that realm of horror, because horror is flexible like that. It can sort of exist in like this. And I like to think of like when I think of the flexibility of horror, the first person that comes to mind immediately is like an Ari Aster, who
say
that like all his movies have like a little, like Hereditary is the obvious answer, and even Midsommar to a certain extent. But like I wouldn't really even categorize any of his 4 films to be full, like, well, especially Beau is Afraid and of course Eddington. Neither one of those are really horror necessarily, but I think there are like horror elements to them. Absolutely. Yeah. So, and I can definitely, again, see that with Bridge Planet Nine. I think the heist sort of sci-fi-ness is really more of I think it might be a more accurate way of going about it. But sure. I also, again, to speak on sort of the Ari Aster of it all, this thing that you're sort of circling in this story, I think is more of like this idea of grief and loss and this inevitable transformation that comes from experience and all that. That sort of is very evident, I think, throughout the story. So I have a question sort of centering on this idea of like protecting yourself, like as the creator of stuff like this. And I think you can say the same thing about your other work as well. How do you protect yourself emotionally while working on stuff that's super heavy, like Bridge Planet Nine and so on?
I'll say more about protect yourself, like trying to, do you mean protect myself in terms of like,
there's this
how it appears to the public or how it affects me, or?
I guess there's a couple ways you could go about it. I mean, there's sort of like this Heath Ledger going to a hole in your hotel type of protect yourself. Yeah. But also like not drawing too much from your own experiences in these stories and sort of supplanting them into the story sort of haphazardly, I guess, as well. Mm-hmm. But also like working on it for an extended period of time and not losing, I guess, your light. I don't know. I was hoping you would sort of run with it, Jared. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's okay. That's like a sweet way of saying my story's depressing. To me, I think it's just heavy stuff resonates. It's kind of like eating candy for dinner or a steak, like I love candy, of course, but like you need something real, you need substance at some point. And I think those are the stories that people usually connect with more, even with like lighthearted stuff. Like you ask people about their favorite X-Men story or something, it's probably something that is a little heavy, right? It's probably a Claremont story or something like that they connected with. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like not a light story at all. So to me, and in terms of protecting or like not putting too much of myself in it, I actually find myself working the opposite direction. Like I connect with work that is vulnerable. And so I strive to be okay with that. Like, no, put more of yourself into it. Like, don't be scared to say things. Don't be scared to show yourself. That's how people connect with art. And I think about creators that I like Jeff Lemire or like Tilly Walden is really good at it. Like you read her books and you feel like you can get to know her in the books feel guarded. It feels like she's putting herself out there. And that is a huge part of the draw and what makes those stories so special. So I think that's all important. And, you know, not that I've ever been on a sci-fi heist yet. But
you are young, you know,
I am young.
You have got a lot of life ahead of you.
That's right. Bucket list. But yes, I think there are things in the characters, or, you know, there is some stuff in there that's a little heavier, like hard to deal with, or maybe things that I've had experiences with in one way or another in my life. And I think it's good to connect with those emotions. So I don't feel maybe I don't protect myself enough. Protect is maybe not the right word. I think it's more of just getting in touch with yourself and telling honest stories is, I think, always going to be the best way to do it. And the more honest I can get and the more of me I can put into the work, I think the more people can hopefully connect with it and be like, yeah, I'm a person too. And I've felt those things or done those things, you know? I think music in particular is a little bit more of a direct line with that sometimes. But it's the same thing to me, you know, when you have super, super generic pop songs, they don't resonate. And then you hear that one dude on an acoustic in a bar and he's pouring his heart out and you're like, oh my God, I've been there, man, you know, to a degree. There's obviously like, you can cross a line either direction, but yeah, connecting with people emotionally, I think that's what it's all about. And I don't see a drawback for putting myself into the page as much as I can, you know?
Sure. I've always been so, I've recently, I talked about this recently with Tony McMillan when he was on the show a couple weeks ago. And it's this idea, I'm obsessed with this sort of relationship dynamic between a creator and a fan. Like, I'm painting this picture for everybody at home that's listening of this creator who writes this really personal thing. Like, again, for instance, like Bridge Planet 9. Say, I'll just use you as an example here, Jared, is like, say you were at SPX and say Bridge Planet 9 was already out, and say someone comes to your booth and says, oh my gosh, they like pour their heart out to you and they're in near tears by how it sort of struck them and sort of really spoke to them in a certain way. And you're, from your vantage point, and I think this is natural, is you're like, maybe you're like, oh my gosh, this person is, they think they know me because of this thing that I put out. I'm just obsessed with this dynamic because you feel that. I know that for instance, like for a while there when I was in sort of I would say in the mid 2010s, I had this really hot Donny Cates run. I was really into Donny and his work. And, you know, cause he is someone I think is pretty, you know, when he was at the height of his career, it was pretty apparent that he was sort of, you know, shooting from the hip in terms of like his work and things that he was writing about, right? Like he had, you know, I think it's no secret that he had like some issues, you know, his earlier years, and he was sort of
baby teeth and all that stuff. Yeah,
absolutely.
Pretty personal.
Buzzkill, you know, like all these things are speaking very much to like some of his life things. And, you know, I thought I knew him so well based on that work, right? And then and like I've had the opportunity to work with Donny through, I work for Comic Sketch Art. If you've ever been to a convention, it's like this comic book agency. And, you know, Donny Cates is one of those folks. And it's just interesting. It's this sort of dynamic that I'm obsessed with because you're getting to know these folks through their work. And I don't have like a really interesting sort of tie-in to a question. I guess I'm sort of excited for that moment for you at some point down the road where like, someone can come up to your booth and go, man, I was really, really attached to this book, and you can sort of experience that. I'm just curious to one day down the road, Jared, when you come back on the show, I'm really curious to sort of hear your thoughts on that idea and sort of that dynamic and how you sort of responded at that moment.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. Yeah, the whole parasocial thing, it is fascinating. It's funny because I think podcasts are the like peak of that, because people listen to a lot of podcasts. You really get to know the people hosting them. Mm-hmm. And I've had that happen. There's a few comic podcasts that I listen to, and I meet them at New York Comic Con or whatever. And they're like, yo, hey. And of course, like, why wouldn't they be that way? They don't know me, but I'm like, no, I heard all your stories about your kids and about how hard it was to draw this book and stuff. And they're like, yeah, like if you want to buy a print. But
well, let me ask you this, not to put you on the spot. And I don't
sure.
Be honest, please. I'm curious. Have you ever listened to an episode of the Oblivion Bar before?
I did. Today? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've listened to a few.
And we obviously had a little time to chat before the interview, and we're going to get back to Bridge Planet 9 at some point. I promise you, we're on a little bit of a segue, but like,
all good.
And Aaron's not here, so he can't really defend himself. But like in that small interaction, do you feel like our personalities sort of come through correctly, I guess. We haven't had a chance to hang out in person, and I hope we do at some point, but I'd be curious. I guess this would be a better question when that eventually happens. But like, you definitely bring up a good point of like the podcast. We do expose our underbelly to a certain point, but who we are in this conversation I don't know if it always reflects well on who we actually are in person.
Well, sure. Yeah. And there's obviously things you're not going to talk about on a podcast, which you might talk about in person. So yeah, but I think it's good. I think from what I've heard, I feel like, you get to know you guys. And I think personality is a big part of podcasts. Not that I know anything about podcasts, but the ones I listen to, I like hearing a little bit more, what are
some of your favorite podcasts? Just out of curiosity, what are some of your favorite comic book podcasts?
Comic book podcast. I'm a very not loyal podcast listener. So I kind of bounce around a little bit. I have listened to this one. I've listened to Off Panel. I've listened to a lot of Inkful.
Sean's awesome.
Mateos. Yeah, Sean and Mateo. I'm a big fan of Mateos Galera's work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really like hearing his thoughts on process. But I've listened to some of the other oones. Mark Miller's podcast. There's one more. I don't remember, but I
was just curious. Yeah. Some of my peers. So I'm always curious where people's ears are at, because I always feel like even to this day, I'm shouting into the void. Aaron and I are shouting into the void with the show, but it's always the best feeling. And it's only happened please, everybody don't hear what I'm not saying. This has happened like 6 times in my entire life. But if someone comes up and is like, oh my gosh, I listened to the Oblivion Bar and I enjoy it. It always tickles me. And it's one of those things. And again, I'm like, I guess it's one of those things where I'm always curious where like, especially creators, like it always very much surprises me when I have a creator on and they're like, oh yeah, the greatest compliment I've ever gotten, Jared, is when Brian K. Vaughan said that we gave the best Tom King interview he's ever heard. I will look at that. Like you can put that on my grave.
Yeah. So Brian K. Vaughan talking about Tom King and you all in the same sentence, all of that happening at once. Yeah. That sounds pretty great. I'm up for that.
I can definitely, I will like keep that in that like refills my lifeblood when I need it, but all right, enough bragging about the show. Let's talk more about Bridge Planet 9. Cause I need to ask you, again, as you said earlier, Bridge Planet 9, first published work. You've obviously done other pieces. You did a one shot and you had another graphic novel, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. But what was it about Top Shelf or what was it that Top Shelf said to you that convinced you that was the right publisher for this story?
Nothing, because I've been reading Top Shelf for years. Yeah. So it was really cool to work with them because it wasn't somebody that I had to kind of schmooze insincerely or be like, oh, let me look at their Wikipedia page real quick so I know what books they put out when I talk to them. I can say like, I read Top Shelf. I've got plenty on my shelf over there. And, I've known Chris Starros's work since long before I met him. So once that ball got rolling, I was on board. They certainly did not have to convince me. I was pretty excited about working with them.
Chris being your editor, for everybody at home. Yeah.
Chris Starros is editor in chief for Top Shelf and kind of the Top Shelf guy. And
Mr.
has
Shelf,
worked with,
as they call him.
Mr. Yeah, I don't call him that. No, we're not close enough, but other people, no, but he's worked with Alan Moore and Jeff Lemire and all these other Robert Vendetti and all those guys. So yeah, when that was an opportunity, I was pretty excited to take it. And he was pretty forward about like, hey, we might get into your story a lot and really try to figure out the best way to tell it. And as anybody who makes indie comics knows, usually you're like really flying solo. Like you might send it to your friends or something, but most people are not going to tell you, they're not going to be super blunt about what they think is really great or really bad. So it was good. And it was good to work with a publisher that I felt like had put out lots of good books. So I knew it wasn't just sort of like random opinions. It was coming from people with experience who have really done awesome work. And it made it a lot easier to feel collaborative about it,
Yeah, there is a really nice peace of mind there when it comes to someone that has a record like Top Shelf, like you said, and Chris as well. Like both of those sort of institutions within comics are known for making great comics. And, you mentioned Jeff Lemire. I think like when I think of Top Shelf, I think immediately of Jeff Lemire because all the work that he did there with Essex County and so on. So, I think the Top Shelf is Top Shelf is a publisher that I'm often like, I'll have a thought during a day. I'll be like, man, I haven't looked to see what Top Shelf has put out here recently. I should go and look, it's because they always have something out that I think can resonate with a large group of folks, but like specifically me, you know?
Yeah. No, every time I go to SPX, there's top shelf books like weighing down my backpack by the time I leave. So
Sure. Well, Jared, I have one final question for you here. You know, you've been so generous with your time, and I appreciate you joining us here on the Oblivion Bar, us being me today, because Aaron's not here. But and again, it sort of circles back to this idea that we haven't really touched on, but I think I was immediately curious about when you're sort of looking at your career as a whole thus far. And it's this idea of collaboration, you know, and I firmly believe, and I think you maybe even would agree that like comics can be like the greatest collaboration of any medium.
Yeah, of course.
Movies and music and all these things, definitely. But like comics, I feel like there's this idea of just like 5 to 7 people getting together and making this beautiful thing that just the story that can't be told in any other medium. There's something really special about it. And thus far, though, in your career, you've been a solo act. And, you know, I'm just curious, you know, again, final question for you here, Jared, is like, is it appealing to you at all to eventually partner up with someone in comics to tell a story? Or has it always been the goal for you to tell your stories the way that you want to?
I hate all people. So no, I'm just kidding. It's absolutely part of my plan and what I want to do. I think there is something really, really cool about making a book and feeling like you made it on your own and being able to, you know, even small stuff like visualizing it, writing the scripts out, and then drawing it yourself. And it can really as weird as it sounds, it can like streamline your process a lot too. It's obviously more work on your end, but there's something really nice about having that totality involved. But I would love to work with artists and write more books. I would like to draw books for other people too, but I think I'd really like to write more and have other artists involved. But it's also a time thing and kind of one project at a time type thing. And then there's certainly projects that I have in mind that I don't want other people to draw that I'm excited to draw and going to do at some point. So, but yeah, collaboration, I mean, definitely up for it. It can be tough to find the right people to work with, but it is certainly part of the plan at some point.
Yeah. You know, it's one of those things where I'm always so impressed, as I said earlier, someone who can do the coloring, like, again, you didn't do the coloring here, but like the writing, the illustrating, the coloring, the lettering, the whole shebang. Like you did lettering for this, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, I did all of it. Wow. And it's good. I would honestly say, like, if you want to make comics, it can be good to do it either way. Like, even if you make a book and you're like, I actually think this is terrible, doing all of it is still really, I think it gives you a really rounded perspective on the process and what people need to do those jobs and the types of skills. And it's, you know, it's good.
Yeah. Well, we talked to, God, I'm name dropping like a jerk tonight, but we had
it's all good.
We had Todd McFarlane on the show earlier in the week, and
who's that? Todd who?
Yeah, just some guy, some indie guy. You haven't heard of him probably, but
right.
He got like the funny thing about Todd is that he doesn't like to answer questions directly. Like I've heard this through rumblings throughout podcasting. People all
really
they tell you about like he's a great guest, but he won't answer your question. You'll ask him a question, he'll go, "Well, I don't know, I don't see it like that." You could be like, Todd, you think is Spawn the greatest character of all time? And he'd be like, well, I don't know. I wouldn't say that. And then he'd go on this long spiel about the actual thing that he wanted to talk about. And he did go on this spiel of this idea of like, you know, when it comes, part of his frustration with Marvel and working with a collaborator when it came to like doing the Hulk and Spider-Man and everything else was that like these writers would not respect that he has to draw the New York skyline 17 times in a 22-page comic.
Yeah.
You know? So there's something in the idea that like, but then like, again, to sort of flip it on its head, you know, we've already talked about him. My favorite writer is Brian K. Vaughan. And I love Brian K. Vaughan. He's a top pick for me as well. Yeah. He's just incredible. And he has this like saying that I've heard him say in panels, and he said it on our show when I had him on. He always says like, I'm not a novelist. I love the collaborative sort of venture in comics. So like there's no wrong answer, but I'm always, it's one of those things that I'm curious about with creators. And, you know, like you have people who start off as an artist and like will sort of morph into like the writer artist. I think of like Daniel Warren Johnson is I think a classic example of someone who I think maybe won't ever, no, I'm not even going to say this. Like I was going to say maybe never draws, a book by itself. Like he'll always write and draw, but he recently just wrote and had Riley Rossimo draw, series. So I don't know. It's one of those things that I'm always just kind of curious to hear the thoughts of a creator because, you know, when we talk down the road, you and I, you know, a couple years or even longer, maybe, I hope it's not that long, but if it is, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this collaborative sort of venture because it sort of sounds like you're okay with sort of doing the the comic scene yourself, but also it sounds like, again, as you said, you wouldn't mind writing stuff or maybe even drawing, but
yeah, I think there's stuff particularly with art that I just feel like I have ideas that other people could do better.
Sure.
And I might feel like my style would shortchange those particular types of concepts. And then there's other stuff, like I said, on the other end of that, which is like, I think it fits what I do. And so I want to keep it there. But I do love, we've mentioned Jeff Lemire a few times. I'm a huge fan, if that wasn't super clear, but I think his model is really cool, which he does his own books and he does graphic novels occasionally. And sometimes he just, now he's doing Minor Arcana. Mm-hmm. But he works with a lot of other people too. So if I could hit some type of stride like that, I would be pretty ecstatic.
Sure. Okay. So I said I had one final question. I guess
that's okay. I'm
quick
good.
Question before I get you out of here, Jared. You seem like someone who's really got their finger on the pulse when it comes to great media, movies, comics. I'm looking at your physical media collection behind you, and I'm a big fan. You can see, like, same. I have well over 1,200 comics behind me, and then I have a whole other collection of movies, well over 800 movies, physical movies.
Nice.
So obviously we're cut from the same cloth in that. Sort of thing, but could you just sort of really low pressure, just like, what are a couple movies, comics, television, podcasts, music, albums? Are you a big fan of the new Sabrina Carpenter album? Like, what are some things that like you've really been enjoying recently that you want to sort of put on people's radar here that I'll listen to this conversation?
Oh man, I was so high pressure.
Just first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah. Well, I've been watching the new Alien show and I'm into it. I know not everybody feels that way, but I've really been enjoying it. Two comics I picked up recently that just have the number one is Escape.
Oh, Rick Remender.
I really liked that. The Dead and Dying.
Is that Daniel Acuna as well?
Mm-hmm.
On art? Yeah.
It's I mean, it's one of those books where I saw the team and I was like, you don't even have to give me the pitch. Like, just throw it in the bag. It's fine. Right. Dead and Dying with
Everything Dead and Dying.
Phillips. Everything Dead and Dying. Yes, I really enjoyed that. Those are only like one issue out, but I really liked
Tate Brombell and Jacob Phillips. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In terms of music, I am a big music person. I have been listening. Oh man, I have a Bayside shirt on. I will always represent Bayside. I love Bayside. But I've listened to another band called Grayscale recently. Their new record is really good. I've been listening to a pop band called, I think they're pronounced Muna. It's like Muna. Mm-hmm. So I've been into them, and I just always listening to Jimmy Eat World forever. So that's just always going to be in the rotation.
The Middle is, I think, the anthem for millennials. So I think we're around the same age. When I think of The Middle, I immediately think like what's the Billy Joel song from the 80s where it's like, we didn't start the fire, that whole song. The Middle is the millennial song where like, we're just here doing our best, so I totally agree. Jimmy Eat World. Yeah. It's an anthem every time one of their songs come on.
Yeah. I'm like, every record, they're just it's always playing at some point. So
yeah. Does it make you jealous at all to know that I'm going to see A Day to Remember tomorrow live?
Oh, you're going to see Day to Remember?
Yeah.
I will tell you that it doesn't make me jealous. And here's the reason why. Because I've seen them 3 times. Uh-huh. And the first time I saw them was like the same year that For Those Who Have Heart came out. And it was like a 200 cap room.
Sure.
And
very intimate.
Yeah. So, and it was just like, and that was like, I had listened to them a little bit, but that was the first time that I really saw them. And it was just like insane. I like a lot of punk and hardcore, and that show was very, very memorable. And it was also very much one of those things that I look back and I'm like, wow, nobody's going to see that band that way ever again. But it'll be fun. I'm sure you'll have a good time. I'm into it. I
was sort of halfway waiting for you to be like, no, I mean, I saw them when they sucked. But you're not jealous because you've seen them live many times, it sounds like. So
yeah, a few times. I did want to go. They were touring with August Burns Red, and I didn't go, but I should have. I don't know who they're touring with now, though.
The opener is Yellow Card, which, funny enough.
Yeah, I like Yellow Card a lot.
Yellow Card has a very special place in my heart because it was Ocean Avenue was the first album I ever bought with my own money.
Oh, yeah? I'm not going to tell you my first album is way more embarrassing than that.
You kind of have to now. Just by saying that, you have to tell me what it is.
Okay. A comic book podcast is probably the only place I can get away with it. Especially because now I'm like a very pretentious punk emo kid. But the first record I ever bought with my own money was the soundtrack to the Animaniacs TV show.
Oh, nice. I love that. That's funny. That's interesting too. I just hit my mic. That's interesting that you had that the soundtrack to the Animaniacs. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wow, for everyone at home that maybe doesn't know what the Animaniacs are, there was a Fox Kids block of like Animaniacs and Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon and Freakazoid and
exactly.
Static Shock, Batman Beyond,
Static Shock and Batman Beyond. Like, holy crap! I mean, obviously Batman the animated series and Spider-Man and X-Men, but I feel like Batman Beyond and Static Shock. Especially Static Shock. Like, I don't know what it was with that show, but I was loving it at the time.
Yeah. It was a time that I want to go to again. Like, there's just like capture it in a bottle, like just Saturday morning at 9:15 in the morning. And I'm like 14 and God, just incredible. Incredible.
Exactly. But I would not recommend the Animaniacs record. I'm not like, spin this.
I need the Mondo limited print of the Animaniacs.
That's right. With the screen printed cover.
That's right.
And the like variant on the vinyl. Yes, exactly. Glitter or something, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's got a very special pressing that was 70 were only made. But Jared, my gosh, what a pleasure to have you here on the show. As I was saying earlier, just would love to get you back on the show at some point down the road when you're a 3-time Eisner winner and you're doing books with Greg Smallwood, you're doing your DC thing or something. I don't know. Like, real quick, last thing. Do you have any interest? I know it's a stupid question as well, but like, do you have any interest for eventually working for the big two? Are you like indie all the way, man? I'm a purist, loving Rockets, all that shit.
I have 2 Spider-Man tattoos and an X-Men tattoo. I am more than happy to write and read superhero comics. It is funny going to SPX as a tie back to the beginning of our conversation, because it is a really weird mix of both. Some people are like, I don't read any comics. I just buy books. And I'm like, okay. And then there's a lot of people who are like, we're just, talking about the latest run of Amazing Spider-Man or the new DC event or whatever. So yeah, I would definitely do that. And I think I will like pass out if I ever write anything with Greg Smallwood, just to put that out there, because that dude is killer.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, 2 of my good friends that were former podcasters, I think they still kind of do it sometimes, but there was a time where, Griffin Sheridan and Ethan Parker were just, lowly podcasters for, just sort of doing like a Spider-Man podcast. And now they're writing Spider-Man and they're writing Godzilla and all these things.
Yeah, that's sick.
So it can happen, it's one of those things that it can happen like that. So, but again, Jared, I just want to remind all the listeners here, Bridge Planet 9, that'll be available at your local comic book shop on October 21st. So you can still pre-order it, get that ready for your pull box when it eventually comes out. I'll also have links in the show notes to Jared's website for that, with the Top Kale website, but also to his one-shot Western Lost Stars, which I had a chance to read and really enjoyed, and his other graphic novel, Heavy Kill. So Jared, before I let you go, is there anything that I missed, any socials that you want folks to know about, or possibly, I mean, I'm not trying to mine you for any information, but is there any projects that you want to tease before I let you go?
No projects to tease, really. Working on another book, another graphic novel is probably the next thing that's going to happen, but still in progress. In terms of social media, you can definitely find me on Instagram. It's just Jared_Throne. My last name is pretty Googleable, so I'm pretty easy to find. But go by Bridge Planet 9, and I'll be at New York Comic Con.
Oh,
I'll be
awesome.
I'll be there too. Cool. I'll be at the IDW table for, if people don't know, IDW owns Top Shelf, so I'll be at that table on Sunday doing a signing. But yeah, if you're there, come say hi and buy the book, and send me Instagram comics about how much you like or dislike it.
Tell us how much you love the Animaniacs and
That's right. World. Hit me up with your favorite Animaniacs track.
All right, Jared. What a pleasure again. Love to have you back on the show at some point. But honestly, until I see you at New York Comic Con here in a couple of weeks, we'll talk to you soon. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much.